Arrow is a vampire that could be described as very self-assured. Maybe that's arrogant or cocky, but one thing about him and the Volturi is that not only are they always one step ahead, they're more like 20 steps ahead. They have an answer for everything, every threat, every challenge, every change that occurs in the vampire world. He knows it all. The Volturi have spies all across the globe that report ongoings within vampire covens. Basically every precaution is taken. As for Arrow, well, he truly believed he was untouchable, and that's something I really enjoyed about Michael Sheen's performance in the movies. He portrayed Arrow in that manner. Nothing surprised him. He'd seen it all. So you'll remember his face after witnessing what occurred in Alice's vision in Breaking Dawn. He watched the destruction of his entire coven, including his own demise alongside Marcus and Caius. Yes, they got some kills of their own, but it was in no way worth the price paid on the Volturi side, and was the first time in millennia Arrow was frightened. And in today's video, I'm going to explain exactly why. Let's take a look. I just mentioned in the intro that nothing surprised Arrow. He'd been around so long that he experienced every emotion a million times over. He'd seen the rise and falls of civilizations, cities, covens, plagues, disasters, rebellions, unique individuals. He truly has seen it all. Don't forget, he's lived approximately 30 human lifespans combined, so there wasn't much that took him by surprise. This is supported by the reaction to his encounter with Renesmee Cullen for the first time. That weird, unusual high-pitched laugh. He hadn't been taken by surprise or shocked like that for so long that he'd forgotten what it was like to actually feel that way. The first vampire hybrids to be known by the Volturi to ever exist. It was truly fascinating to him. It left him asking questions. What does this mean for the future of the race? Should he recruit hybrids? Can he actually make them? And just how powerful can they be? Can Renesmee be? It had his mind racing with excitement. While that was the first time Arrow experienced true excitement in millennia, he also experienced something else that day, something he'd also forgotten: fear. Arrow had already decided that regardless of whatever evidence the Cullens would provide, sufficient or not, he was set on destroying everyone and eradicating the Cullens out of existence, sparing the vampires with unique gifts that he wanted as part of his collection. No more desirable, of course, than Alice. It was actually the vision that Alice showed him of forthcoming events should he have carried through on his attack that instilled such a fear within the Volturi leader that it forced him to rethink absolutely everything, and also worked in his favour, which I'll explain. So, in the vision, the Volturi suffered huge casualties. Jane, Alec, Dimitri, Caius, Marcus, and even Arrow himself. He expected to walk into Forks and absolutely annihilate the Cullens and their witnesses. In his mind, the Volturi Guard were indestructible. I've always said, Arrow pieced it together so everyone had a position, a place, and a purpose. After millennia of successfully dominating the vampire world, the Volturi had not known defeat. They had not even got to the point of considering anyone a real threat. Anytime that word was used, the threat was just a coven with a specially talented vampire that Arrow wanted, which resulted in evidence being fabricated against that coven. Even so, they still wiped them out rather efficiently. However, in Alice's vision, it highlights just how vulnerable the Volturi were when the right group of vampires opposed them. It highlighted that his quest to destroy the Cullens in the hopes of recruiting Alice was actually a lot more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. He sees how they work as a team, how they protect each other. It wasn't just an army of vampires, but a collective that fought for each other, and the fact that the Cullens had friends willing to risk their lives for them further shows Arrow the difference between true loyalty and enforcing it. He also realized the growing potential of the Cullens and just how powerful they truly were. As I said, he thought he'd run right through them, take Alice and then off home to Volterra. but it really wasn't the case. He acknowledged just how vulnerable Jane and Alec were on the battlefield and how their positioning was completely flawed, understanding that Jane especially should be protected by physically strong vampires in order to harness her gift completely. He's seen how Marcus was happy to die and willingly welcomed his demise at the hands of Stefan and Vladimir, which highlights to Arrow just how deeply unhappy his coven brother is. Caius charging into battle and being killed moments later by the Denali's as a means of revenge for their mother and sister Irina was actually kind of embarrassing on Caius' part. Arrow himself, over 3,000 years old and incredibly powerful, overwhelmed and destroyed by newborn Bella and her husband Edward. It made Arrow realize that he had a lot of powerful enemies, many of whom could destroy everything he's built. Arrow discovers that he's underestimated everyone and knows he needs to now return to Volterra and restructure the Volturi, compose themselves, and think about how they apply themselves better on the battlefield. He has to deal with the fact that his own life would have ended that day should he have fought the Cullens. It's basically an ego check. The Volturi were in power, and most likely always would be, but it was a lesson learned more than anything. Don't go looking for a war because you will find one. Arrow had to use his cunning and manipulative ways to convince his guard and witnesses of his own not to fight that day. He could never truly reveal what he saw in Alice's vision to anyone, not even Caius or Marcus. He knew Alice wouldn't reveal the details either, especially if he simply just walked away, which he did. What Arrow doesn't realize about Alice is that her visions can fluctuate and alter themselves. Not everything she sees is absolute. They can change depending on the situation, and not every one of Alice's visions have come true. It's also unknown if Alice can somehow manipulate her thoughts to her favor once she has already experienced her vision. Arrow's reaction can be attributed to the fear of the unknown. Vampires, particularly ancient ones like Arrow, are creatures of habit and predictability. The vision Alice presents is a stark deviation from the world Arrow knows and controls. It represents change, unpredictability, and the uncharted territory of a world without the Volturi's rule. For a being who has existed for centuries with the assurance of his power and the predictability of his environment, this is a deeply unsettling prospect, and it's more of a physical threat. It's an existential crisis. Arrow's identity is intertwined with his role as a leader of the Volturi. He sees himself as a guardian of vampire law and order, and his actions, however ruthless, are justified in his mind as necessary for the greater good of vampire society. The vision challenges this self-perception, confronting him with the reality that his actions might lead to chaos and destruction, the very things he believes he is preventing. However, as I mentioned, Alice's visions are not set in stone. It's not a fixed outcome. The vision is not, it's a possibility based on the current trajectory of events. This aspect underscores the theme of free will and power of choice in determining one's future. Arrow's response to the vision is not just about fear, it's about recognizing his role and his own choices and how they play in shaping future outcomes. It suggests that destiny is not predetermined, but is continually being rewritten through the decisions and outcomes of individuals. This really adds complexity to Arrow's character and shows him in a different, more vulnerable light. It humanizes a character who is often seen as the epitome of villainy in the saga, and it demonstrates that even those who wield immense power can be swayed by the potential of loss and defeat.